Mastering a double stroke roll often becomes way too complicated. But today we're going to simplify it because there are really just two core things that you actually need to be practicing in order to play smooth, fast, relaxed doubles. You can do this. Hey, welcome to The Non-Glamorous Drummer. This is a channel that's all about giving you the core skills that really matter so that you can know your next step and make serious progress in less time. And hey, speaking of serious progress, I want to help you revolutionize your four-way independence. I want to help you build complete four-way limb independence so that you can play what you want to play, your feet can play what they want to play, you can keep time with your left foot while you're grooving, you can improvise between the kick and the snare, you can free your right foot from your right hand, play whatever you want to play, even play jazz, swing, and Latin stuff. I want you to be able to do all these things, and what's cool is that I have a totally free PDF e-guide that helps you do exactly this and gives you the exact steps to do it. It gives you specific exercises, different kinds of exercises, so you can find what works for you so that you can build coordination. This guide is called Know What to Practice. The three-part daily practice routine. Part 1 is hand technique, part 2 is coordination, and part 3 is music. I can honestly say this is my favorite guide. It's been the most popular one on the channel because it's helped out so many drummers, because it's so thorough and so step-by-step, detailed yet simple, where you know exactly what to practice. And so it gives you the confidence that you're practicing the right things and you're growing and you're making progress. So it eliminates the stress and the confusion for mastering the drums. And so if you're tired of being stressed and confused and you want to master your coordination and have some specific exercises right there in front of you to go work on, this guide is for you. It's helped out thousands of drummers before you, so become one of them, grab it for free. All right, on with today's lesson. There are two versions of not great doubles that I see in many of my students, whether it's with a one-on-one student I'm working with, or maybe a student in one of my courses who sent in a video. And so either way, I've looked at so many different double stroke rolls out there, and there are two very commonly seen not great versions of it. And so I'm going to show you those real quick. One of them is this one, where when you start getting fast, it kind of turns into this, where it just gets all choppy. Maybe that's you. Maybe you've got the fingers down, like you're able to do this right here. I've had students who can nail the finger work. They can do the fast singles, which is great. But then when they're going to fast doubles, suddenly it gets all crazy. And so of course that flows into their paradiddles too, and their paradiddles are really sloppy. The other version, I've also had plenty of students that fall into this category where they get their nice, slow, relaxed doubles going on. As they get faster, they're able to go really fast. They don't feel like they're hitting a ceiling. They can just keep going and going. But it turns into go, 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 go. We're hearing that initial stroke, and it kind of takes on that galloping feel because the doubles aren't even. Go, 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 go. We're hearing those strokes, and those in-between notes are just not strong, because the fingers are not really being incorporated there the way they need to. And so generally those are the two routes that doubles tend to take, sometimes one direction or the other. One is where it's just too stiff, like that, too much wrist involved. The other one is where it's just a little bit wimpy, just not enough strength there. So whether your doubles fall into those two categories or some other category out there and you know that they need work, what we're breaking down today is these two core areas, which if you were paying attention there, maybe you could catch what they are. So the first thing that you've really got to work on consistently to play doubles well is relaxed rebound. The second thing is finger work. You've got a finger strength, really. Finger strength, finger work, finger agility, whatever you want to call it. That's got to be there. That has to be in place. You can't have loud, fast, smooth doubles without both of those things going on. Just because you have the finger strength and you're able to go doesn't mean that fast doubles are magically going to happen. Just because you've got the relaxed rebound doesn't mean that you can scale your doubles and suddenly they're fast and strong. There's got to be the fingers there too. So these two things have to work together strategically. Otherwise, you always end up in one of those two extremes, and you pretty much always end up having problems, which carries over into paradiddles and pretty much every other rudiment. So it's important to get this right, because being able to nail a double stroke roll helps so much with so many things around the kit. Whether it's quick timekeeping, like maybe you want to play something like, whether it's rock, funk, swing, whatever, if you want to have that versatility to throw in little quick things like that, or even to go and be able to do cool little intricate things like that. Doubles directly, of course, influence that. Same though with like a snare cadence part. If you're playing a song that has a snare cadence sort of thing, that's a very direct application for doubles. But also the very same motions and techniques you develop in mastering a double stroke roll also play into molar. And just your overall ability to play anything quickly and smoothly, because you're basically training your hands to use rebound of the sticks, so that's smoothness. You're training your fingers to reinforce that, and so that's where the speed and the strength comes in. And so this is very powerful, very worth practicing, and so I hope this is something that you're ready to really dig into. So let's unpack this a little bit more, talk about those 2 core areas that you need to work on so that you'll know exactly what you need to practice right now on your pad. As a matter of fact, you can pull your pad out right now and be playing along with me, because this is going to help you so much and be very practical, concrete, and actionable. If you've watched many of my videos, you've heard me talk about the free bounce, where we take the stick and we just drop it like that. We're not throwing it down, we're just gently dropping it. And in doing this, you can have the stick cradled like this, where it's just at this resting point. You could have it a little further up here maybe. Either way, you've established a fulcrum point where the stick is free to move. And so as you drop it, it's just going to bounce like that. That's how you know you've got a nice loose grip with a solid fulcrum. If you're able to gently push the stick, let it drop, and get those free bounces with both hands. Now what we want to do to play a slow double stroke roll is actually do that free bounce, but then stop it after it bounces twice. So really this is one stroke, because we're gently pushing the stick down, but we're letting it bounce twice, then we're catching it. And so practice this with both hands until it's comfortable. Odds are the weak hand is going to be a little bit more challenging. That's fine, spend more time with it. If you get it down with your right hand, then great, set the right stick down. Just focus on that left hand. Then, as quickly as you're able to, once it's solid hand to hand, practice this. Now this is hard for many people because we want to control things. We want to control what our hands are doing, and it's very difficult to mentally process the back and forth, like thinking in terms of right, left, while still maintaining that looseness. That's key. It's one thing to sit here and do this, but it's another to alternate back and forth and go and make sure that that looseness is maintained going back and forth. But if you can get this going, this is so crucial. I think this is probably honestly the biggest issue, biggest core problem wreaking havoc in double stroke rolls out there that I see in so many of my students. So many of them haven't really taken the time to practice very, very slow doubles. When I say very, very slow doubles, I mean like eighth notes as slow as 60. Now 80 is okay, 70 is even better, but if you can go all the way down to 60, so those are eighth notes at 60 beats a minute, which is really slow. And that's pretty much the absolute slowest rate at which you can make that free bounce happen. It just now happened a little quicker because the butt end hit my leg. Maybe you can make it go even slower. It also depends on the bounciness of your pad. And you could hear while I was doing that, that was not metronomically perfect. There are little inconsistencies there. And that's going to happen when you go that slow. But if you can make yourself go that slow, it helps train your mind to let go of that control, to let the bounce happen, and allow space. There's a lot of really important things going on here, and allowing space in your playing, like being able to play something really slow and really relaxed, that's very important. That comes into play so many times on the drum set, and if you can make yourself do that with the slow doubles, that's really going to help you out later. Now even 80, so if we go 80, that's still very slow. And that feels a little more natural. I think that's a more natural pace for this. And so that might be a place you want to start, or at least aim for. Once you've got the individual 2-note free bounce going, practice alternating eighth notes at 80, and then try slowing down even more than that. But know that what's most important here is getting this super solid, super comfortable, not going any faster than that, being able to let go of control and let the bounce happen, because this is the core. This is the core of playing doubles well, because notice something that's going on here. The sticks are bouncing, and they're bouncing high. There's stick height here. Stick height is very important when you want to play loud doubles. Because look at how, as I go faster, that's something I want to maintain. I want to maintain that stick height if I'm going to play the doubles loudly, evenly, nice and strong. And so that stick height is something that we don't want to lose. And so if starting out we're going like this, then we've kind of lost before we've even really started, because we've eliminated that stick height, and the stick height is what we need in order to play loudly and evenly. Because another variation of a mediocre double stroke roll is this. Not that that sounded bad, but if that's all you can do, that's kind of limiting, because all that is just, it's almost just a buzz roll. And a lot of people can do that very quickly. I had a teacher that joked that that was the middle school roll. The middle school band student roll where you just go for it. And so that's one thing that doesn't really require a whole lot of skill as soon as you get the hang of that. But what does require skill is, that's what I want you to be able to do. So slow, very slow free bounce doubles hand to hand. In doing this, we're not using any fingers yet because we're going really slow. We're not using any fingers. We're just using physics. That's what I want you to practice. Do this every day until it becomes second nature, very comfortable, because this is the foundation. Now, this is no good if we don't have finger strengthening too. And so while you're working on that, totally separately, I want you to be working on finger strengthening. So my favorite exercise for doing this is probably just what I call a French grip exercise. Nothing new, drummers have been doing this forever, but where you grip with your thumb on top, just like this, and then propel the stick with your fingers. Now, I believe there are right ways and wrong ways to use this exercise. You can also use it for different purposes. And if our purpose is building finger strength, then what we want to aim for isn't this. You might be able to get to where you can do that finger twitch and get going pretty quick, which is cool and it's impressive and everything. You can use that to impress your friends. But that's not really going to build us the finger strength and power that we need, because it's these forearm muscles that are controlling the fingers. And if we're just doing a finger twitch, that's great and all. All we got to do is sit here and shake and we can do that. But it needs to be controlled and very precise and specific and intentional. So really what we want to do is practice doing these full strokes. Full strokes with the fingers where the stick is bouncing all the way up to 12 o'clock. I like to aim for 8th notes at 120 when doing this. I think that's a great benchmark, which is right here. Now, most likely, if you haven't practiced this before, you're not going to get there super quickly. It's going to take a little bit of time, but that's okay. What I want you to focus on is form and mechanics of what you're doing. I want you to focus on the grip. Very specifically, focus on how you're gripping the stick here. Make sure you're not gripping it this way. We don't want the stick pointing out at a weird angle. We don't want the thumb perpendicular to it. We actually want the thumb as parallel to the stick as possible, because that gives you more of the thumb in contact with the stick, which gives you more control. Basically, the thumb is at that angle of like an exit ramp on a highway, where it just kind of merges right onto there. Not parallel, because that's impossible, but pretty close to it. And all the fingers are able to make contact with the stick, even the pinky. We want for the pinky to be able to make contact here so that all three of these fingers are taking on an active role. And actually, even first finger is an active participant too, because we can sit here and just twist back and forth and make this motion happen. And this may be the first thing you want to practice, actually. Try just doing this in the air to get a feeling for this twisting motion, figuring out, all right, how much pressure do I need to put on here so that it's in place and moving back and forth. And then when you actually start hitting the pad, you'll find you don't need as much pressure. And then bring the other fingers in, which helps relieve some of that pressure. You really don't have to squeeze very hard here once the other fingers are there in place. And so practice just getting that full stroke. Maybe as slow as you can go without being tempted to use wrist and arm. No wrist and arm. We don't want any wrist and arm. Do whatever you got to do to make sure that that isn't happening, that it's just fingers driving the stick. And so going this slow, you're not going to feel any workout happening yet, but that's fine. What we want to do is build that form. Get comfortable with the form, with the grip here, with the mechanics. Then you can begin going faster while maintaining that good form. The faster you get, then you start to feel the burn. Then you can take a towel, put a towel on here, make it more of a workout surface. That's where you really start to work out the fingers. And ultimately that helps you with playing loudly, powerfully, quickly, and it actually makes this easier too. Which, by the way, when you're doing loud French grip 8th notes like this, have the stick out here near the ends of your fingers. But then when you're going softer and quicker, you can let the stick slide back more into here, which makes speed more easy. So this position right here for the slow, loud, and then this position here for faster. And so you can practice both of those, but definitely focus on the big, strong 8s. Aim to get those up to 120. Once you're able to do that, throw a towel on there, make it a workout surface. As you go faster than 120, it's okay for the stick height to become less, because honestly, you have to squeeze a lot to maintain enough pressure so that you don't lose the stick. If you're going for a full stick height, that becomes very uncomfortable as you get faster. So it's okay to calm down the stick height a little bit as you get quicker. As an alternative, another favorite exercise is this one right here. Pinch the stick tightly here on the tip. Hold your arm out just like this, and using only your fingers, bring the stick up and down. This, in a way, this is more directly applying to our standard American grip, because, you know, when we're doing French grip, we're building finger strength, but then we're changing our grip a little bit, but still applying that same finger work. But if you do this exercise, you get to maintain that same American grip, where it's more of a palms down like this. And so literally all you're doing is then sliding your hands down here, and then there's literally the same kind of motion going on. And so that can be another really beneficial way to practice it. I've suggested this method so many times to young students. Like if I'm teaching kids, a lot of times this is a lot quicker to grasp and be able to do and get some results from than this. Plus it works on the go. And so you could even go for a walk. While you're out on a walk, do some of this to work out your forearms, whatever craziness you want to do. But I just throw that at you as an extra option in case you want to try that out also. But here's the big question. At what tempo do we use the fingers? So when we're playing a double stroke roll, at what tempo do we start to mix that free rebound with the fingers so that we get what we want, which is just bada, 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 machine gun even doubles. At what point do we do that, and when do we not use fingers? Because I mentioned earlier how I've had students try to use fingers at too slow of a tempo, which instead bogs things down and makes it very clumsy, because your fingers, if you try to play like slow singles with your fingers, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. There's a certain tempo threshold where fingers become more practical, but any slower than that, and honestly, it's just cumbersome and doesn't make any sense. With singles, with one-handed singles, that mark is right around about 8th notes at 140. If you're playing quiet 8th notes around 140, you can begin to transition from wrist to fingers, and it works. It might feel a little weird, but as you go faster from there, switching to fingers makes sense. Now with the double stroke roll, what I've noticed, and it might feel different from drummer to drummer, but in general, in that if you're playing 16ths, if you're playing 16th notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that tempo, those would be 1 E and a 2 E and a. Around that 100 to 120 range is where you want to start making that transition. So I told you to practice very slow 8th note doubles at 80. So that would be 16th notes at 40. We half that tempo. So 40, that's really slow. But practice that, and as you work your way up, when you get up to about 100, this is where you start to notice, I don't have a metronome in my ears, but that's about 100, 16ths around 100. You'll start to notice that you hear the stroke and you start to lose that evenness. When you're going really slow, you don't really notice inconsistencies in volume, but as you get faster, those get wider and wider. And so you end up with what I showed you earlier, where that galloping happens, and we don't want that. So what we find is that most of the time, once you get around to 100, 110, especially up to 120, that's where you have to start bringing in the fingers. But this is where it gets interesting. You can actually cheat and use a little bit of wrist. This is what I've noticed in analyzing what I'm doing and watching video of what my hands are doing, especially slow motion. What happens with my grip, if I'm going about like right here, going very slowly, I will actually, you can see right now, I'm using a little bit of wrist. You can see this knuckle right here bouncing. And if this knuckle's moving, that means the wrist is moving. I'm actually using my wrists to cheat a little bit, so that if I were going like this, it would start to get sloppy. But instead I'm bringing in my wrist, but I'm not letting it get too stiff. If it were all wrist, it would become, there's still looseness, and that's what you gotta be careful about here. There's kind of a fine line that we wanna straddle here, where we wanna stay loose, but we can still use some wrist so that our result is, so you can see how loose my hands are, just like when we're playing singles. I'm using wrist to drive these singles, but my hand is so loose, the stick's moving a bunch within my hand. That's what we want here when we're playing these doubles. So that we can actually make them sound even before we bring the fingers in. So we're using the wrist to compensate for the lack of strength in that second note. So instead of this, we're just straight up cheating using a little bit of wrist. So that works great around that 100 range. And as we start getting faster than that, something happens as we push toward 120. It's hard to say exactly where the mark is. It's going to be different depending on what surface you're on, depending on who you are. It might be different drummer to drummer. But around that 120 mark, that's where suddenly you start to find that that second note can be played better by bringing the fingers in rather than an actual wrist stroke. So it becomes more like this, wrist fingers, wrist fingers. And before you know it, fingers are actually playing that second note. And so they've taken over the job of the wrist, whose job was to cheat and make things even. And so really that's what's happening when I'm playing my doubles, and that's what's going to need to be happening ultimately in your doubles. Now, you might be like, Steven, this is a whole bunch of details it's kind of just making this overwhelming and complicated, and you said at the top of the video, we're going to simplify this and make it not complicated. That's definitely what I want to do. I definitely want to keep this simple and not make this overly complicated. So what I just shared with you was the details of what's going on with my doubles. Because some of you guys who are very observant, very astute, you may have noticed that. You're like, Steven, you're cheating. You're using some wrist there. And so you might be noticing all these things that I'm doing in my doubles that I wasn't talking about. So I want to shed some light on that and put that out in the open and say that's what's actually happening. Not to tell you to follow those exact steps, but instead to tell you that's what's going to ultimately happen if you continue practicing these things that I've told you to practice. Because I didn't sit down and intentionally practice, all right, I'm going to use some wrist here. Okay, now I'm going to use some fingers. What's cool is that when you make it a goal to use this loose kind of grip that I'm always teaching you of letting the stick move within your hand when you're playing singles, when you're playing doubles, and like I showed you a minute ago, when you're doing this loose grip with singles, as you get faster, it's very natural for the fingers to take over because the fingers are already following the stick, which is totally true with the doubles, where it's natural for the fingers to help take over as you get quicker. You don't have to think so much about that and try so hard for that. It's going to naturally happen if you're focusing on getting this solid, the first thing I showed you today, core thing number one, as well as building that finger strength, core thing number two. And so if you get those two things going on, they will begin to intersect, and you can focus on practicing your 16th doubles at 100 to 120, and you'll start to find that you're able to make that transition and cross that threshold. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. This doesn't happen in a couple of weeks. This was something that I worked on a bunch while I was in college. My double stroke rolls were not good getting into college, and they were pretty solid by the time I got out of college. Now, that wasn't my one goal to practice over 4 years. There were a lot of other things I was definitely working on, and so it's not like I was spending hours every day on this, but it was a work in progress for a long time, and I've continued to fine-tune my grip and fine-tune my doubles. And I'm sure my doubles are not the best in the world because there are marching band guys out there that are insanely consistent with this and who are just machines, robots with this. I'm not a machine, I'm not a robot because I'm a drum set player. And my guess is that that's who you are too, because you're wanting to play drum set and you want to make music, and so you don't want to get all caught up in the rudiments, and I don't want you to either. So don't get hung up on the details of this. Practice those two things, loose and slow, eighth notes at 80 beats a minute. Get that really solid, gradually bring it up. You could think 40, 16ths at 40. Gradually bring it up, knowing that eventually, as you're continuing to work on the finger strengthening, when you get up to 100, that's where you can start to use more wrists and then bring in the fingers, and it's all going to come together. But know that it takes time. Be patient with it. Always be patient with this, but know that you can do this. Know that you are capable of this because these are learned skills. Nobody is just born with the ability to play double stroke rolls. Nobody's born with perfect grip and perfect finger strength. These are things that we don't really accomplish in other areas of life unless we actually sit down and work them on the drums. So you got to be patient with yourself with this and just know that it takes time, but know that work ethic trumps talent here. And even if you don't feel very talented with this, if you put in the work, you're going to get it. You're going to be able to play this. It just requires that regular discipline. Just spend 15 minutes on this every day. 15 minutes every day is going to go a very long way. Now, I never want to leave you without something tangible, so I want you to grab that guide I mentioned earlier, the 3-part daily practice guide. This guide's really cool for a lot of reasons. It's been helping thousands upon thousands of drummers. It's the most popular guide here on this channel because the first part of it is all about hand technique. I give you some cool exercises for working singles, doubles, paradiddles, and continuing to refine your technique. And so that'll give you a good next step for once you've worked on those two things I've given you today. That guide will give you some exercises to continue to further that and really help push you further. But what's really cool, probably my favorite thing about this guide and what's most helpful to most people is part 2, which is coordination. If you feel like you are lacking anywhere in the 4-way independence department, this guide is for you because it's going to work out your feet. It's going to work out the hand-foot relationships in different contexts. You're going to be able to play different hand patterns on top of different foot patterns. You'll be able to interact and improvise between a hand and a foot. You'll be able to play grooves with left foot timekeeping, play jazz swing stuff, Latin stuff. You name it, this is really cool, and you're fully capable of doing this because the guide gives you the step-by-step for actually getting it done. And that's very freeing. That's really cool to know that when you grab this guide, the exact steps are there. All you got to do is follow them. Do a little of this, a little of that, a little of that. It's all laid out for you. You can build 4-way coordination. You can master this stuff. That's such a big step toward freedom and comfort on the drum set, becoming at home on the kit so that you can musically improvise and play songs well. A lot of that starts with hand technique, which is crucial, and a lot of that builds off of coordination. And also part 3 in the guide, we talk about music. That's the third part, music. So this is your complete practice guide, literally what the title is. Your complete practice guide that has all the key things you need to be working on regularly, so you can be confident in knowing that you're not leaving anything out. So this guide is going to help you out. It's helped so many drummers, so it's a no-brainer. Go download it for free. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video has really helped you out. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Can't wait to hear how this helps you and how you're able to take action on these steps and really make some serious progress with your hands and with your double stroke roll. So can't wait to hear about it. Keep up the practicing. Know that you can do this. Stay non-glamorous.